Why are ethical issues central to documentary filmmaking? Welcome to the Week 2 lecture, and this is our topic. From our textbook author Bill Nichols, ethics exist to govern the conducts of groups regarding matters for which hard and fast rules or laws will not suffice. Let's consider the following questions of representation from the point of view of a documentarian. What do we do with people when we make a documentary? How do we treat people we film? What do we owe them and the audience? Should they receive compensation? Should they have the right to block the inclusion of events that prove embarrassing or incriminating? These are really big and complicated questions that documentarians face when they present people as subjects. Before you start to make a documentary, you have the participants sign a release form giving the filmmaker the right to do what they see fit with the footage. Informed consent is given to the participants. They should be told of the possible consequences of their participation. The Milgram Experiment is an example of what can go wrong when participants of a study aren't given informed consent. Be sure to view the video on the ethics playlist about the Milgram Experiment. Another example of a social experiment gone wrong and shut down due to ethical concerns was the Stanford Prison Experiment. And there's a video pertaining to this particular experiment as well on the ethics playlist on D2L. In documentary, we have a three-way interaction: the filmmaker, the subjects, and the audience. The three-way interaction forms a verbal formulation. The most classic is, "I speak about them to you." The filmmaker takes on a persona, or there's a surrogate, can be a voice of God. Speaking in the first person edges the documentary form towards the diary, essay, and aspects of avant-garde or experimental film and video. Examples of "I speak about them to you": The Thin Blue Line by Errol Morris and The Gleaners and I by Agnes Varda. Documentarian Marlon Riggs uses the verbal formulation of "I" or "we" speak about us to you in his documentary Tongues Untied. He gives a personal representation for gay black men. "I" or "we" speak about us to you is also seen in the groundbreaking documentary Tarnation. In this brave and deeply personal documentary, Caillou explores his mother's battle with mental illness and its impact on him growing up and into adulthood. It speaks about them to us. This institutional discourse with the voice of God narration, authoritative and very impersonal in its presentation. And these are the classic social issue documentaries that we'll look at later in the semester, one being the 1938 documentary, The River. This week's documentary is Nanook of the North, made by Robert Flaherty in 1922, considered to be one of the first feature-length documentaries, even though the term didn't exist at the time of the film's release. It was selected for historic preservation by the Library of Congress in 1989 for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. it's really important to consider the conditions around which Nanook of the North was made and also the technology that was available at the time. In 1915, the film technology didn't allow for the synchronous recording of sound and image. We'll take a look at an example of Robert Flaherty discussing the challenging and extreme weather conditions during the shoot. The article How I Made Nanook of the North on D2L is something you should read to get a better understanding of just how challenging it was for Flaherty to even just get the footage successfully that he was able to use in the film. A quote from Flaherty, "One has to often distort a thing to catch its true spirit." Rhetoric, the attempt to persuade or convince. Consider Flaherty's rhetoric in the film. What view of the subjects is he trying to persuade the audience to adopt? In the module on D2L, read the article about visual sovereignty by Dr. Michelle Rahija. A quote about visual sovereignty, what it means for indigenous people to laugh at the camera as the tactic of visual sovereignty, to confront the spectator with the often absurd assumptions that circulate around visual representations of Native Americans, while also flagging their involvement and, to some degree, complicity in these often disempowering structures of cinematic dominance and stereotype. Choose one of the following questions for your critical writing assignment this week. Be sure to read it in detail in the syllabus. Question 1. After reading about and watching Nanook of the North, are the representations of the Inuit people ethical? Why or why not? Be sure to support your claim with evidence. Or, compare and contrast Nanook of the North with another documentary that depicts a culture different from your own. Are the conventions established in Nanook of the North present in the documentary of your choice? The suggested documentary for comparison is Happy People, 1 Year in the Taiga. I thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a productive week.